Hello and welcome back to the Lowdown, everybody, where today we are predicting the final Premier League table. Coming up on today's show, we decide where Chelsea will finish this season.
That back four, on paper, it looks good. But I think when they come up against the top teams, but also the mid-table teams, they do concede a fair amount of goals.
Whether Man City signings will make any difference to their miserable campaign.
They actually just need a body in midfield at this point. Like someone who can run, someone who can make tackles, and Nico Gonzalez will do that.
And whether United can finish in the top half. So they're going to be putting all their eggs into these cup competitions. And I just don't think their league form picks up that much, if I'm totally honest. Hello and welcome back to the Lowdown, everybody. And I've got an all-star lineup for you guys today. Mikey McCubbin is away in the Philippines for the next few weeks. So I've called up the big guns. We've got AGT and Nubaid Haroon. Guys, welcome back to the Lowdown. Nubaid, how are we doing?
Good, thank you. Good. AGT's about to go to Thailand. I thought that's what you were going to queue up, but we've got Philippines and Thailand happening.
And you just recovered from tonsillitis. So
yeah, as exotic as it comes.
At least you're better now, though, man.
Yeah.
And you're doing a tour of Liverpool's games through Thailand. by the
Yeah,
sounds
yeah.
of things.
I'm going to be watching the Plymouth FA Cup game, very important game, in Bangkok. And then the Derby, which is probably the most important game of the season now, in Koh Samui. And then Wolves at home in Koh Phangan. So if anyone's knocking about, let us know. We'll watch it together.
Love that. Guys, today, as you know, the January transfer window has slammed shut. And I thought it was a good time to predict the final Premier League table. Obviously, there are a number of games to go. 15 for all sides, except for Liverpool, 16. So it's going to be challenging, but let's see how we get along. And, you know, from two Liverpool fans' perspective as well, you guys can just look down on the rest of the Premier League and have ultimate say.
This will be nice.
Let's kick off with our top four. So let's do this in a one-er, but one at a time, if that makes sense. Nubaid, who would be your top four? And then we'll ask AGT, and then we'll do some
Do
explaining.
you want me to go 1 to 4?
1 to 4, why not?
So Liverpool top. First time I've done Premier League predictions, and it's a one team that's been dead set. I was like, they're finishing top. Arsenal second. City third.
Okay.
So unsure though. And Chelsea fourth.
Okay, AGT, how was yours?
Oh, I mean, the first two are almost certs, aren't they? If things carry on as they are, then Liverpool win the Premier League. I'll just say that again, because I've never actually seen it with my own eyes. Yeah. Liverpool will hopefully win the
You'll
Premier
be in the
League.
stadium.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
I will. Arsenal, I'm going Forest.
Ooh.
Which, listen, if we said that at the start of the season, I think I would have been put in a straitjacket, because that is almost, obviously, if Liverpool do win the league, you're going to give the manager of the year to Arne Slot. But Nuno is a firm second for me if they do finish in this position. I'm going to go for City to slip into fourth, only because, I won't spoil it, but the teams below them, I don't think have the experience to get over the line into that top four. And I think City, do they deserve top four? Maybe not, but surely they're going to string some wins together. Hopefully it isn't too many though.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I had very similar. I've got Liverpool, then Arsenal, then I actually went Chelsea in third, then I did go City in fourth. We'll get on to the reasons why I think Forest are dropping out a little bit later on. But I suppose the big talking point from that was you didn't have Chelsea in your top four.
Correct.
AGT, what do you think? What's your thoughts there?
They're in fifth for me.
Okay.
Again, going forward, they're a joy to watch at times. Obviously, Nico Jackson's had a bit of a dry spell, but Cole Palmer can turn it on whenever. Obviously, Neto came on last night and made a difference in a big style. I just think defensively, including the keeper, I mean, they're rotating between Jorgensen and Sanchez quite a lot at the minute, but that back four, on paper, it looks good. But I think when they come up against the top teams, but also the mid-table teams, they do concede a fair amount of goals. And I just think, if you asked a Chelsea fan at the start of the season, would you be happy with 6? It's an improvement. I think they probably would have taken it. And it probably gets you Champions League football as well.
Do you think if they looked at how the season's shaped up, like say Forest end up third, I think as a Chelsea fan you'd be fuming.
Gutted,
yeah.
Well, listen, don't forget they had a chance to go top at Christmas. But listen, it's his first season. You have to give him some time. I know Chelsea isn't a club that notoriously does that, but yeah, I think there's just so much to sort out. This is almost a sorting out season for Chelsea. Get your eggs and ducks in a row, and then you can push on for a more solid place next year. But where did they finish last year? Was it
Sixth?
Sixth. It's an improvement.
Yeah. The reason I had them higher than that, I had them in third, was that although they've got some problems at the moment, like Nicholas Jackson's on a real dry spell as well, they obviously tried to or they at least thought about selling Nkunku in January as well. Where's his head state at now. Fofana's out long term as well, but they just got a very deep squad to rotate in the Conference League, and maybe that has been slightly affected by João Felix and Disasi leaving this month on loan as well. But Man City have 2 extra games to play in the Champions League to get through to the last 16. Chelsea in the Conference League, I think that is such a benefit as well, to be able to fully rotate for sure. The downside for them, though, is that they've got some really difficult fixtures remaining. So they've still got to play Villa, Arsenal, Brentford, Newcastle, and Forest away. And they've also got to host you lot as well. Yeah. And their form recently hasn't been that good, but I just can't see City, as it stands, finishing above them. They feel like they're all over the shop defensively. Maybe Nico Gonzalez makes a big difference in midfield, who we should touch on shortly. But I just think Chelsea do have enough to finish in the top 3. What I wanted to ask you, Nubaid, was we've all said Liverpool 1, Arsenal 2. But did Arsenal's result over Man City at the weekend, did that worry you in any way?
So I don't know if AJT's going to agree, but I said before the game, if City beat Arsenal, everyone's in trouble. And I didn't think City were going to beat Arsenal. But then Arsenal sleepwalking to a potential draw or a loss. When City got back into it, I thought, oh no, here we go. And the fact that they lost, I think it was more of an effect, in my opinion, on Arsenal feeling like they got one over the line. And that's how it felt at the end of the game. I do just think, though, they can't, I know Arsenal fans, they've been getting smashed and slammed for over-celebrating. I do think sometimes you have to rein it in a little bit. It's a huge win, obviously, but you also have to recognise the circumstance and the situation, how close that game was to slipping away. It was a big sliding doors moment when Partey scored, and there's so long to go. Now is not the time to be like, we're there, because I think a lot of people said after the game, you're still 6 points off the leaders, whether it's Liverpool or whoever, who have a game in hand. That could be 7. That's 3 games you need to get over them and need them to drop points. And so I think it was big for them, but I don't think it changed my mind that much on Arsenal are definitely going to chase it down.
I agree. I think if they had, let's just say, for instance, Arsenal won the league last year, I don't think they would have celebrated like that against City on Sunday. And I think maybe that shows a lack of emotional control. You know, they've been criticised about that quite a lot in the past. It's a massive win, don't get me wrong. Did the game actually reflect a 5-1 scoreline? Probably not. But they would have to hope that Liverpool maybe lose 4 games from here on in, and they would have to be, their record would have to go unblemished until the end of the season. And I just don't think, with Saka not there, even though obviously Nwaneri's been good in his absence, Trossard has filled in, I can't see them catching Liverpool. And that's not just because I'm a Liverpool fan. I'm looking at the rest of the fixtures and I just can't see it.
Do you think that when we were chasing the league down and we won it before we won it the first time, do you remember games where it felt like we'd win and it felt desperate? It wasn't like we were like, oh my, like we're ready to win the league. We were actually going like, we're not ready, but we could be. Mm-hmm. And I think that it feels really similar with Arsenal. The desperation's like sort of overflowing into over emotion too early.
And also in that era, Liverpool were the chasers. Now we're being chased. Mm-hmm. And it's a totally different mindset you have to have. Because Liverpool have got it over the line before, yes, it was in lockdown, but the Alissons, the Van Dijks, the Trents, the Robbos, the Salahs, obviously Mane and Firmino aren't there anymore, but those guys have been there and done it. Hopefully that influence spreads across in terms of, you heard Salah after the game, we stay humble. He wasn't joking around or saying it tongue in cheek. We must until, it's mathematically done.
Yeah, I think the Salah factor is absolutely massive, isn't it, as well? 25 goals and 17 assists. Like, Arsenal just don't have a forward that's fit, and even if they were fit, probably wouldn't get up close to those numbers. So I do think that's a key factor.
Sure.
And then your attacking depth as well. I know Jadon Danns has just joined my club Sunderland on loan. There's a back injury there. But your depth in forward areas is just so much better than Arsenal's and anyone else's in the league this year. And it does feel like this season, on the back of a big international summer with the Euros and Copa America and expanded European competitions as well, has just in many ways been defined by injuries. And you guys have had seasons ruined in the past by injuries. And you've had injury issues for sure, like Alisson, Jota's missed a number of games, etc.
Konate as well.
Konate. I'm not saying that you guys have had it light, but compared to some sides in terms of your key men, I think, Arsenal can feel a little bit aggrieved, although they've also shot themselves in the foot at various points with pointless red cards, I would say as well. So let's see what happens there. So did anyone not have Man City in the top 4? Because I think that's a talking point.
I had City third.
You had City third. So you think that they could vastly improve before the end of the season, or is it just a sort of no one really established themselves as that third best side?
Well, the fact that I think they're 4th at the time of recording, and they had 13 games where they won twice. That probably tells you that like they only need to go one gear. And I think we saw against Brentford and Ipswich, there were signs that they could pull it together. But I also just think watching the Arsenal game, watching them so many times this season, they actually just need a body in midfield at this point. Like someone who can run, someone who can make tackles, and Nico Gonzalez will do that. Even if he doesn't settle as well as they need to, and it's no disrespect on Kovacic or Gundogan or even Bernardo Silva. They're great footballers. But sometimes you just need a body in there. Someone who is a bit more athletic than what you've currently got. And then you've got the forwards that can win you games, and it will take a Foden purple patch and they'll win 3 or 4 straight. I think it's more about the other teams. At City, like I said, after 13 games, shouldn't have been anywhere near 4th. There was a point where I looked at the table and I thought, I swear you guys should be 9th. Why are you involved in this conversation? So I just think they'll stay in there and they've just got too much quality.
Do you think there's a smidge of what Liverpool had the season after they won the Premier League in 2021? The injuries came thick and fast, if you remember. That was a real crisis at the time. And I think mentally, I mean, you saw when Club Brugge scored against them the other night, they're all on their knees. They're all dejected. And that was, half an hour into the game. I think mentally, they must be shot. They must be exhausted. It's no secret that after you win that many championships in a row and the trophies that they've collated, it is unbelievable. But every good thing comes to an end. Nelly Furtado said it.
So did Ten Hag as well.
All eras come to an end,
exactly.
including his.
Exactly, it came a lot sooner than City's. I mean, Sunday was the 4th time this season they've conceded 4 goals in a game. That's never wild. Used to happen under Pep. Pep's original City sides were so entertaining. That Centurion side, even the season after where they beat you guys by a point. But then they really shored up defensively and just really went through an amazing era of 25 goals max conceded per Premier League season. At the moment, they're on track to concede 55 goals.
Which is actually more than Liverpool conceded in the 13-14 season. I think we scored 100 and conceded 50 with Simon Mignolet in goal. But 2 years ago when they were on fire, whenever City did concede a goal, it was like headline news. It's like, oh my God, they've let one in. Now you can just run through and do what you want, basically.
But I do agree with you guys that I think the individual quality of Haaland, of Foden, of De Bruyne, I just can't see them not getting in the top 4, personally.
Yeah, I've slipped them in, but again, it was very, very close.
Fair.
And
let's chat the rest of the European spots now. This could be really interesting because England are on track to get a 5th Champions League spot guaranteed. There's also, if Spurs and United and various other teams win cup competitions, could be as many as 7 in the Champions League next year, I've read, which is absolutely mad. But let's, for the sake of this, just really think of this as the Europa League kind of Conference League area. Plus Bournemouth, plus 5th spot. I've revealed mine there. Potentially getting Champions League. So let's go 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th. AGT, why don't you kick off with your 5?
Do you know what? I wish I could change these already. This is so difficult to do. So I've gone Liverpool, Arsenal, Forest, City, Chelsea in 5th, Newcastle 6th, Villa 7th, Bournemouth 8th.
Okay. That is, I mean, it's the similar sort of size that I've got, to be fair. I've got Bournemouth in 5th, Forest in 6th, Newcastle, then Villa.
It's going to be tight either way.
Yeah, I've got the exact same size, just different order. I've got Newcastle in 5th, Forest in 6th, Bournemouth in 7th, and Villa in 8th. Yeah. Only because I think Villa, after Champions League nights, they've struggled every single time. I think they've only won 1 in like the last 6. Bournemouth, they're, in my opinion, the best team to watch. They just don't have the best players, so they can't do it consistently. Yeah. And then, I don't know, honestly, I've just put Forest down on, how are they going to fall off this badly? Like, that's quite
why
a fall.
I have them 3rd.
Yeah, I hear it now. I'm hearing it. I'm kind of going...
I have them 6th as well, though. I mean, look, the Forest season has been absolutely amazing. They are on track to get 42 more points than last year. That is insane. Like, they really, really deserve respect. Chris Wood, I think outside the Premier League, there's only 2 players that have scored more goals than Chris Wood in Europe's top 5 leagues. Robert Lewandowski and Harry Kane. That is it. Yeah. I mean, Chris Wood's having a phenomenal season. Morgan Gibbs-White, Elliot Anderson, Murillo, Milenkovic, Ola Aina's been amazing.
As well.
But if you look, their style of play, where they invite a certain amount of pressure onto them, their possession is the lowest in the Premier League. I think their pass accuracy is 19th. I do think that eventually tells. And yes, they don't have European competition. But I think if you look in their underlying numbers, I think they're 9th for expected points. And they have got a little bit lucky at various points this season, I would say. They got absolutely hammered by Bournemouth the week before last, then responded with a 7-0 over Brighton. Look, I could have them anywhere between 3rd and 8th, but at the moment I've got them 6th. But AGT, you're a bigger believer than I am.
Yeah, only because I saw them, get a very good point against Liverpool recently. They're just so direct.
Some of your toughest games this season, probably?
Do you know what? Yes, but we still should have won that game.
Yeah.
yeah, I'm still gutted that we didn't win that game, the Newcastle game, the Fulham game, because we could have won it by now. But yeah, in terms of their directness, I mean, the keeper had the game of his life against Liverpool, but Murillo and Milenkovic, they look for incisive passes through the lines or even out wide. And as soon as that ball is with Elanga or Callum Hudson-Odoi, it's go time. And they're like the red arrows. They're just absolutely, where's Chris Wood? Can we get to the byline, cross it back? And Chris Wood, I mean, what is he, 33?
Yeah,
33.
What a career.
Yeah.
What a twilight. What a swan song. And he's obviously signed a new deal as well. So he must be the best footballer to ever come out of New Zealand, surely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, Tim Cahill.
He's Australian.
Australian.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow. Easy.
Aussies aren't going to
Get cancelled for that.
Winston
I
Reid's
can't
probably
even.
off cancel.
Winston Reid played for West Ham for a bit. But yeah, I do believe in them. And we're now at a stage, we're 2/3 into the season. I just don't see how that team that is so well set up, the only thing that's going to stop them is themselves in injuries. But I am making an exception. I know earlier I said I can't see, Villa or Bournemouth breaking into the Champions League. But I will give it to Forest because of the way that they're set up. It's so difficult to play against. Arsenal have still got to go there as well. So, yeah, I'm so impressed by them. And actually, if it wasn't for Arne Slot's, debut season going so successfully, Forest for me are like them and Bournemouth are the two most exciting teams to watch, I'd say.
I do think my only thing with Forest is I looked at their fixtures and they've got a lot of teams coming up that they have to go and play against. And by that, what I mean is they're going to have more of the ball. And as you just said, like they actually don't want the ball.
Yeah.
And there's certain games
They don't mind.
Yeah. Like certain games, you're going to have to take control of possession. You're going to have to try and play through the opposition. That part I think they struggle with. But I also think, I know we're 2/3 away in, but they have ran really hot. Like Chris Wood can't score more goals, and like
He's on track for like 28.
I know, that's what I mean. Like that cannot
that's
happen,
ridiculous.
right? Like I think he's a great forward, by the way. But if you look at his hat trick against Brighton, like those are not goals you keep getting every single week, So yeah, maybe we'll both be completely wrong, but I just don't see them finishing.
I think if we can get to the kind of mid-March stage and they're still where they are, then you go that they're not slipping.
Yeah.
They're just going to carry on as they are.
Yeah, I had Bournemouth in 5th. I mean, they've only lost one of their last 12 games, winning 7 of those, and it was against you lot at the weekend. And they've gone on that run with a huge injury crisis as well, like scoring 4 at St James's Park, scoring 5 against Forest. They had like 12 players out, I think, at that time as well. Their bench was, I think Jebison was their only player that's kind of ever played in the Premier League who's on their bench. And those players are starting to come back. I think Senesi's back in mid-March. Smith, Araujo and Scott have only got a couple more weeks. Sinisterra's back soon as well. So they've had their...
Evan Nilsson as well.
Evan Nilsson,
he's going to be out for a bit longer
as well. So it's really remarkable what they've done recently, and I do think their style is maybe more translatable across every single game than Forest in terms of consistently picking up points, because it does feel like, as we've talked about with injuries being such a big thing and fatigue being, like if you can just outwork most sides, and Bournemouth seem to be able to do that, and maybe it will come a cropper because they've been using only, 11, 12 players for the last few weeks. But I do think there's a good chance that Bournemouth finish 5th.
It's interesting you say about the running, because I was at the Bournemouth game at Anfield earlier on in the season. Semenyo scores an offside goal after 1 minute. And then, you're thinking, right, how do we respond to this? Lucho scored 2 and Nunes scored 1 by half time. The game was almost done. But in the second half, Bournemouth outran Liverpool. And Arne Slot made that point to the players before the game at the weekend and said, look, if you think you can come here, because haven't they got the widest pitch in the Prem? You heard that. And like you say, the more you run, the more chances you'll get, the more opportunities you'll have to score. So it's unbelievable with the injuries that they've had. Iriola is doing a wonderful job. Unfortunately for Bournemouth, I don't think he stays there. If he gets them Champions League, you've got to see how that works out and give it a go. But I look at him and think he could be a Real Madrid, he could be Barcelona manager, one of the top elite sides. And I just think for them, keeping hold of their players is going to be their biggest challenge.
For sure. Although their recruitment shows that they have replaced very well in the past as well. Let's chat Newcastle, Nubaid. Where did you have Newcastle?
5th.
Nice.
I think they've probably got, in my opinion, out of the 3 teams we've just spoken about, the most sustainable way to win games. They can win games by sitting in. They can win games by attacking. And then they've got, in my opinion, probably the best number 9 in the league overall.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Haaland's the best finisher, I'd say, but Isak's impact on the game, I think, is just better. But then I just think Eddie Howe, they started off so slowly, and I think over the course of the season, those things tend to like equal themselves out. And so where people will probably say right now, like Newcastle might be running hot or Bournemouth are running hot, I think Newcastle are actually just at the level where they probably should have been earlier in the season, and they've just arrived at the right point. Plus, their injuries are starting to clear up as well. And I think out of these teams, Forest and Bournemouth are going to feel pressure if Forest, I'll say, still third in a couple of weeks' time. Other teams are going to come along and go, we need to get a result here. Whereas for Newcastle, they've been here before. They did a couple of seasons ago, and this squad is very similar to that. And I do think, like, generally, they've actually got a very good team now. That front six is actually of real high quality.
Is really clicking at the moment.
So
Wing
good.
backs as well.
Yeah. So I backed them to finish 5th. But honestly, like, I don't think I've said this on here. I think I said it before we started recording. The way I did this, I predicted every single game.
Yeah.
How long did that take you?
Ages, like 2 hours.
Fair play.
That is
Fair
prep.
play.
Yeah,
That is
and then
great
when I
prep.
landed at the end, Newcastle were one of like 2 or 3 teams where I was like, that feels right. Whereas some of the other ones, like Villa and 8th, I was like, I don't even know if it feels right, but I've done it the most fairest way possible. But yeah, I backed them to finish 5th.
Yeah, they have done well. I mean, especially with Harvey Barnes been out for a while now. Callum Wilson's barely played as well. So yeah, no, fair play to them. Tonali in the last few weeks
So
as well has
good,
just been
man.
absolutely exceptional. So yeah, good luck to them. I thought they maybe, Lloyd Kelly and Miguel Almiron weren't key players as well. But again, January affected by PSR, not really strengthening at all. Will that come back to bite them? I mean, Bournemouth and Forest didn't really do any massive business either. Whereas Aston Villa, I had in 8th. And you're looking at some of their signings, AGT, with Rashford coming in, Asensio, Disassi, players that, A, haven't been in great form, but they've got a point to prove, all 3 of them. Do you think Villa had a strong window?
Yeah, in terms of Galacticos bringing in big names, well-known names, unbelievable window for Villa. They really laid their cards on the table and said, listen, we're going for this. This is who we've bought. The wages that they're spending this season are incredible. That's probably one of the reasons why they've increased the ticket prices there. But listen, like you said, they've all got points to prove. Asensio, we've been speaking about him as a wonder kid almost for 10 years now. It feels like since he burst onto the scene at Madrid. Rashford, not much needs to be said about him. If he can score, I would say maybe 6 to 9 goals from here on in to the end of the season. You say that was a good spell.
Yeah.
Again, what the future holds for him in the summer, who knows? Disassi, I think they could have done a little bit better. I don't think he was as great at Chelsea as, Chelsea fans have told me. They call him disaster.
Yeah.
So I think they could have done a little bit better there. But again, that's probably depth. But again, that team...
Is the Duran absence a potentially big one?
It could be. It really could be. And I think his goals, it's not just how many he scored. I think he only scored 12 in his time at Villa, but it's who they were scored against and the timings of the goal, match winners as well. Ollie Watkins, his head obviously got turned by Arsenal. He'll have to just lock in now and focus. But Leon Bailey's still there. He can be tricky. I think what we're going to see is the goals spread out a little bit more. But listen, their front line, if you read that out in 2017, you'd be thinking, wow, Villa are here to stay. But... yeah, I look at the table now, and from 5th down to 9th, there's only 5 points in it.
That's why it's such a difficult job.
So this is why it's so difficult. Thanks for this, mate.
It's
nice,
nice not like people will remember this sort of thing. Right, I think we've talked about the sort of area 5th to 8th. Let's talk 9, 10, 11. Let's basically talk the middle of the range. We can maybe go down to sort of 12th area, 11th. Nubaid, who was your sort of 9th to 12th?
For Brentford, Brighton, Tottenham United.
Okay. Where do you have Fulham out of interest?
13th.
Okay, just out of the...
Yeah.
Okay, why have you got Fulham dropping from 9th to 13th?
And to be fair, there's a couple of things I changed when I did the whole results thing.
Yeah.
And I had Fulham in 11th. And I was like, Spurs and United can't finish below Fulham, respectfully. So I was like, I'm going to have to shift that one. So if I get that one wrong, that was purely instinct.
But this is
should
the
have
year where it
trusted his
all
results.
changes.
Yeah,
and the
maybe.
narratives
Yeah,
are rewritten.
maybe. I think Fulham have been unbelievably good this season. I think Marco Silva's so underrated, considering he lost Mitrovic then, João Palhinha, and he'll probably lose Robinson in the summer. But whenever he loses players, he finds a way around it. Spurs and United, I'm sure we're going to talk more about them. Brentford and Brighton, honestly, could be in any order. Because I think that Brighton are one of these teams that they lost 7-0 and no one talks about it. It's so strange to me that Brighton can be so hit and miss. And
I mean, they've only won 2 of their last 12.
They started so well.
And Fabian Hurst, as you said, when he started off, people were saying they found another great manager out of nowhere, young manager doing X, Y, and Z. But they do seem to get away with a lot of things, and they'll continue to do that. They've just drawn too many games this season. I think they've drawn 9 or 10 games.
That's a lot.
It's too many.
And they can't seem to turn the draws into wins. And they've gone back to what I feel is a bit like they were under Graham Potter. Like they played really good stuff, got to the edge of the box, and then didn't really know what to do. And I think their most recent recruitment hasn't really worked out as as well as their previous few windows. So I think actually you tweeted this, that maybe it's caught up with them losing McAllister, Moses Caicedo over this period, and other players, and now they've landed with this team where you're actually going, how good is Carlos Baleba? I think he's good, but how good is he in comparison to players they've lost? Or how good is... they've still got Welbeck up front, who I think is still a good footballer, but I don't know if you can lean on these guys like you once upon a time could. So yeah, that's currently the order, but could change.
Fair enough. Yeah, they have had a big injury crisis as well. It's fair to say Baleba has been out, Weef has been out, March has missed most of the season. Remember how good he was last year as well.
Unbelievable.
Evan Ferguson's now left the club. Obviously, it's good for him to go get some regular game time as well. I had Brighton in 11th. I went Fulham 9th, West Ham, Brighton,
West Ham,
Palace. Then we'll get into where United and Spurs are.
You've gone big.
But I have gone big. I've
like
gone
it.
United and Spurs both outside of the top 12.
Wow.
AGT, who was your 9th downwards to the next?
So I had Bournemouth in 8th and then Brentford in 9th.
Mm-hmm.
I was at the G-Tech a couple of weeks ago for the Darwin Núñez show, and take away that last 5 minutes, Brentford are such a good footballing team. Especially, I think we've eulogised him a lot this season, but Wissa. He's like a frog. You think you get him, and he shoots off and turns on a sixpence. And Van Dijk was having troubles with him. Again, injuries have faltered their defence a little bit. It's normally a bit tighter there, but they're just such a economic football team. They're no frills and spills. They very direct. They get it out to Wissa and Mbeumo. And what's the price tag on those guys these days? I think Wissa's their all-time now leading Premier League goal scorer. And I just think if I'm looking at the teams below them, they are more consistent. Yes, they've lost at home now to Spurs and Liverpool and Plymouth.
Yeah.
And before that, they hadn't lost at home. That needs to obviously pick up. But listen, I think they will finish it in a decent spot. And again, they're a pleasure to have in the Premier League because... the way they've played and, the manager, how well he speaks. It's such a good community club. I really like Brentford, and I'm not just putting them there because I like them. I think on the pitch,
He's always
they
got a
back it up.
plan. Yeah. He's very impressive, Thomas Frank.
And again, another manager that will probably go on to bigger and better things with all due respect. But great football club and a really good team of footballers there.
Love that. Okay. I think the shock from mine was I had Fulham 9th and I had West Ham 10th. Now, that might... People might go like, whoa, what's going on there? They have lost Antonio for the season. Evan Ferguson's arrived on loan. He's had a really difficult time. Let's see what happens there. But I do think if you look at all the squads in the Premier League right now, I think West Ham have to be up there with Spurs and United for biggest underperformers so far. I do actually think there's some business. Like, they signed some good players. Like, Guido Rodriguez was wanted by Barcelona at one stage, and Barcelona aren't the force that they once were, and they're obviously operating under financial constraints. But, him, Paqueta, Kudus, Bowen, I think they've got enough quality to really rise up the table. Fulkrug as well has barely been fit all season. And as it stands, they are 15th and they are 7 points off 10th. And results under Potter, they've only won 1 of 4. But I do think they've been noticeably better and more competitive in every game as well. And they've had some difficult fixtures. They played Villa, they played Chelsea, etc.
That's a big climb, though. 5 spots
it is a big
this
climb.
Stage in the season.
It is a big climb. But then I went with Brighton dropping from 10th to 11th. And then I went with Palace staying in the same position and United and Spurs not really rising. My big droppers were Brentford going down from 11th to 15th, which is a bit harsh. But I do think that home form was really quite unique. And they have lost their last 4 now at home. And they can't seem to still get these players fit. Like, it's been a whole season pretty much of Henry being out and Hickey being out. And I think that does come a cropper at the end of a season for a club like Brentford that don't necessarily have the deepest squad. And they're relying quite heavily on Damsgaard and Mbeumo and Wissa. And that could well continue. And as I say, they always got a plan. But I had to put someone at 15th. And I've gone with Brentford.
Harsh.
Where did you guys have United and Spurs, Nubaid?
I have them 11th and 12th. Like I said, I literally moved them and went against the whole thing that I worked on for 2 hours because I think Spurs, I back Spurs to do better than United for sure because I think Spurs wants to get players back. I don't know how far Mickey van der Ven is from being fit.
He's back now.
Apparently might miss the Liverpool game.
Managing minutes.
Yeah.
Hopefully he does.
So, I think if they get him fit and generally that back four will just settle itself. They've still got goals. They beat Brentford 2-0. I thought they were they were more gritty that game,
for sure,
which I enjoyed. I saw a different side to how they play, and I think they're the sort of team that if they win a couple, the sentiment changes and they can go on a run. And they had a decent January, to be fair, all things considered, although it was very desperate at certain points. So I do back them. But United, I don't know if it's still years and years of pain. I was going, they can't finish outside the top 12. Like, maybe, like, I guess as a Sunderland fan, like, you don't have this similar sort of attachment that maybe me and AJT have. But I was like,
the hatred.
Yeah, like, I was like, I just...
A lot of pain in our childhood.
Yeah, like, where have you got them?
I have got them. I mean, this is beautiful for me anyway. So I've got Spurs in 11th.
Yeah.
I've got Brighton in 12th.
Okay.
And then United. Which actually, if you look 13th. At the table now, they are 13th. So...
And they're about that good. Like, the reality is they are about where they're supposed to be.
They haven't won 2 games in a row in the league all season.
They're trying to get to 40 points.
They haven't won consecutive games all season.
You know, Flex, who's a big Sky popular figure at Sky, he's joking, but he's not. They get to 40 points and then they're safe, which is mad to say.
So their January, Rashford, Anthony, they weren't key men, obviously, but those are 2 bodies to use. Lissandro Martinez has just done his ACL yesterday as well. They brought in Patrick Dougie, who looks really talented, but he's a 21-year-old coming from Lecce.
Malacia's left.
Malacia's left. So they are down on their squad size, which already looked pretty thin already. They had no faith, or so little faith, in Højlund or Xerxes to start as a 9 against Palace that they played Kobbie Mainoo as a false 9. And they've lost 11 league games so far this season. And they're still in the FA Cup and they're still in the Europa League. And they need to get into the Europa League and win. Well, not get into it. They need to win the Europa League to get Champions League football or any form of European football unless they win the FA Cup. So they're going to be putting all their eggs into these cup competitions. And I just don't think their league form picks up that much, if I'm totally honest. I think there's so much chaos there behind the scenes with Ineos making financial decisions to try and save pennies, the lack of activity in January transfer, Ruben Amorim trying to integrate a new system into a squad that was built around Erik ten Hag's transfer demands for so long. I think they're finishing 13th.
I'd go with them to be more successful in the cups than the league. And like you say, it's just copy and paste every game. You know, the opposition just know exactly what to do to nullify anything they've got. But in the cup, you can never write them off. They've actually become, since Fergie left, a bit of a cup team. And you look at their success, obviously they knocked out Liverpool last year. They won the FA Cup last year. Their only route into Europe, you must go and win a trophy. And I think at the start of the season, obviously Ten Hag was still there, even though they didn't actually want him to be there. But it's out of courtesy that they let him kind of almost kill himself in the end. But when Amorim came in, I think if you said to a United fan, would you take 13th in the Europa League? I think they would have taken it. So actually, if they win that and get in the Champions League after finishing 13th,
that's a win.
I mean, it's a win for them.
They are really bad. Like, there's no hiding from that. Like, when I did the games, they actually had them finishing 15th. That's where I actually thought they were going to finish.
And your heart came in.
Yeah, but I was like, they just cannot.
You settled for 14.
Yeah. I do agree with everything both of you said. Like, they are really, really bad. And I think the biggest issue they're going to have is goals. Xerxes not a goal scorer.
28 goals this season they've scored in the league, bro.
To be fair, that was also the case under Ten Hag. Like, it's been a while since they've scored a lot of goals, since Rashford's purple patch, which now feels like it was a really long time ago. So, yeah, all things said, I'm going to keep them where they are now, 12th, but they could easily finish 15th. I think that would also be completely acceptable for the way they've played.
Nice, yeah. Another team to mention, Palace. Yeah. They are currently 12th. I had them, but they're only 3 points ahead of 15th. So again, we talked about that zone just outside of the sort of 5th downwards. That's really tight, and in that 12th to 15th zone is really tight as well. But they've only lost 3 of their last 16 games, Crystal Palace. Since the 21st of October, they sit 7th for points won. And Ismaila Sarr's now hit the ground, really. They've got Wharton coming back. Mateta's hit this real purple patch as well. I think Palace fans can be pretty chuffed, especially given that their best player, Eberechi Eze, hasn't really had his best season, I would say. They lost Chalobah in January. They kept hold of Gehi, of course. But they've had some things to deal with this year, Palace. And I like the signing of Ben Chilwell on loan. Look, he hasn't played a lot of football. He'll be a backup to Tyreek Mitchell, I imagine, until at least April time, maybe late March. So it's not maybe one for the long term, but they needed a bit of support there in that area for him. And Chilwell, people are disrespectful to Chilwell. Chilwell was a great left back. He was like one of England's best in a period where we didn't necessarily have that much quality in that area, I would say. But still, going to Crystal Palace, hopefully he can rebuild his career a little bit. And in that run of form, they've beaten Man United, West Ham, Brighton and Spurs. They're taking scalps. I think Palace have gone under the radar this year. I do still have them 12th, though. Where did you have them, Nubaid?
I have them in 14th. I think they're a good side, to be fair. And like you said, they're in a purple patch of form. I do think Mateta has proven time and time again that for 8 games he'll score 8, and then for 20 games he won't score at all. So I do think when that runs out, where are the goals going to come from? And I expected more from Eddie Nketiah.
Oh yeah,
I've been so badly let down. It was one of those where I always felt he was too good to be a number 2 at Arsenal, and he was more than good enough to be number 1 at Palace. He's not hit the ground running whatsoever. And now I think now is the sort of period where they'll go, okay, Mateta's slowing up. Can someone find us a goal? And I don't think it'll be Nketiah. So I think they'll slow down a little bit. But it's sort of like in the last 15 games, if they win 7, they're going to end up finishing where we predict them to finish.
Yeah, they had a really slow start to the season under Glasner, who actually finished last season super strong. And I think, again, similar to the Brighton, similar to the Brentford, similar to the Fulhams, if you said you're going to finish 14th, it's a bit of a nothing season, because what do you get for that? You get probably more prize money than finishing 15th. But at the same time, Eddie Nketiah, the way he's just almost not been given a chance, / when he does get the chance, he's super unclinical. I actually said at the start of the season when he was being linked away, I said, if he plays regularly, he gets you 10 to 15 goals a season. And, he's not even going to get 5, let alone 10. So who knows? If they can get a tune out of him in the run-in, they'll need it. But if they can go again in the summer and bring in almost like the new Mateta, and, someone... Essa is coming from Millwall as well, is it?
Yep.
So again, they've got these players. Lacroix, I've been quite impressed by this season.
Yeah, he's good.
Wharton, having him back is massive, but it's a bit of a season for Palace. It's like, it's not too bad, not too great, but again, there's always next year.
Yeah,
sure. Quickly, Spurs. I had them 14th. I don't think they're getting much better, to be honest. Again, it feels like United. So much emphasis has to go into the cups, like those, even more so than United. Like Spurs fans are just desperate for a trophy, and I think they'd write off whatever happens in the league if they won a trophy, even the League Cup. So we'll see what happens this week, obviously with the League Cup second leg as well. They've still got to play Chelsea, Liverpool, Villa away. They've got a lot of injury-prone players, I would say, as well. I think someone needs to look at the medical department there. It's not really delivering. A lot of their players are back soon, but they just feel very brittle at the moment. And I think they'll be mainly focusing on the Cups. I would have them anywhere between 10th and 14th, though. I'm not really confident. But let's see what happens there. Let's move down to the bottom 5, let's say. 16th downwards. Nubaid, who's your 16th downwards?
I'm going to do it backwards because I've not written the numbers next to mine.
Okay.
It's much easier to do it backwards.
I have to keep counting to see where we are.
I've got Southampton bottom.
Yeah.
I just don't think they're very good. Leicester second bottom. I thought it'd be different under Van Nistelrooy. Not been the case. Ipswich third bottom. Unfortunately, all 3 of the promoted sides, I think, going down. Wolves fourth bottom. West Ham fifth bottom. And then Everton.
Okay. So you think the Moyes revolution, as it were, will continue a little bit longer?
Yeah, I think the fact that he's getting goals out of a side that under Sean Dyche couldn't score any, they were struggling to create chances, let alone score goals, is kudos to him. And I also just think he is a very good football manager. And the way the Premier League is sort of changing, teams are becoming a bit more direct. It's almost falling right into his lap. And I think he's got Beto. I really like Beto. Every time I've watched him play, I think he's been decent. But in a Sean Dyche system, he's going to get half a chance a game. I think he's had 11 shots in the last 3 games, which is in comparison to what he was doing under Sean Dyche, amazing. So I think they'll be fine. And then obviously he's found his new Stephen Pina in Iliman Ndiaye, who's so good. So I think they're going to be really tough to play against towards the end of the season.
Nice. AGT, did you have anyone different other than the newly promoted sides going down?
I wish I could say I do, but I don't.
Well,
it's
I think
them
it's
3 again.
in the comments, to be honest.
Yeah, 100%. But what does that say about the Premier League? The 3 teams that come up, they go straight back down. I mean, I'm looking at the rest of the table. Brentford came up, 4 years ago now? Yeah. They've done so well to stay up. Forest have almost done what Brian Clough did, 40 years ago. But apart from that, I'm looking at the rest of the table and I think these are just the names that we'd expect to see in the Prem. Fulham obviously have toyed with the Championship a little bit, but yeah, I do worry a little bit because what does that say to teams coming up? Southampton notoriously are a yo-yo football club. Ipswich, it was great to see them. They play really exciting football. I actually have Leicester to be 19th and Ipswich to be 18th. If that makes a difference, I'm not sure if it does. But yeah, I do worry for the teams coming up, looking at that, going, how do we compete? What is going to happen to us? Are we going straight back down? Do we, once we get in the Prem, start to almost have to plan for the Championship life the next year? it's a tough old league, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I think that's what Ipswich did, to be honest, with like Smodix, Jack Clark, players like that. They tried to build almost like a championship super team, and it still wasn't. It doesn't look like it's going to stay up, to be totally honest. And it's difficult. I mean, I say this as a fan of a club that might come up in Sunderland. I don't think there's any guarantee, but I am seriously worried about coming up to the Premier League. Like when you've seen the clubs between 14th and 17th spend £20 million regularly on players, when you see Bournemouth bringing in FC Porto's striker in Evan Nilsson, you're just like, how can anyone deal with this? How can anyone deal with this in one transfer window as well? I mean, and you don't want to overspend as well, because if you go straight back down and you then lose the best players that proved yourself up from the Championship and they stay up in the Premier League, you could get in massive financial issues as well. And with the PSR era, it's so difficult to breach.
I think, like, I echo everything you said, but when Wolves are fourth bottom and their striker's worth 80 million, and people are saying they could get dragged into it, they've probably got three players, João Gomez another one, Ait Nouri another one, who are all worth 30, 40 million. So if you're coming up from the Championship and say you're Sunderland, that you sign Enzo Leafe, and I was like, how's he gone to Sunderland? But when he comes to the Prem, he's probably, like, I don't know if he's going to be as good as what he's going to be in the Champ, for example.
He'll be back at Roma.
It's one of them ones where it's like, I see, like, I think I just said to you earlier, like, you've had a great window, but Jadon Dance is a great signing for you, but Jadon Dance is nowhere near our starting 11.
No.
And there's such a big gap. I do wonder if style is something, though. Like, Ipswich have played attractive football. Southampton tried to play attractive football. Leicester tried to play somewhat attractive football, and that you don't have a chance. I've started to come more towards the Sean Dyche sort of line of thinking and going, if you're just difficult to beat, which is exactly what Thomas Frank's Brentford are with some quality, you might actually fare a bit better than constantly trying to play sexy football, because in this division you just cannot play that way against better athletes.
No, it's really tough. I mean, even Ipswich, who were the kind of feel good story of this season, they've now lost their last 4. They've conceded 14 in the process. Losing to Southampton at the weekend, that's an absolute killer. You look at Leicester losing 4-0 at Everton at the weekend. They conceded after 10 seconds. Like, this is real morale-sapping stuff. And it just feels very difficult for any of them to survive.
And when you look at the first game of the season, I remember when the fixture list came out, I said, I don't want Ipswich away first game of the season. Brilliant. We've got Ipswich away first game of the season. And I think Liverpool navigated that game really well. But that kind of cloak of, not invincibility, but almost tough to play, especially away from home, I think that's kind of just faded away a little bit. Obviously, their main standout star has been Liam Delap. Now, what happens to him, you know, if Ipswich do go down? But I think the stock of Kieran McKenna is probably, it definitely went up when he got them up. There was talks of him even replacing Ten Hag at the time. But I think his stocks have cooled a little bit. But he's still a good enough manager to stay in the Premier League with another club, I think. But listen, I'm not a fan of any of these clubs, but as a football fan, it is sad to see 3 teams come up and then go straight back down.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ipswich have spent money as well, by the way.
A lot of money.
Leicester haven't spent anything really, and neither of Southampton have spent very little. So Ipswich have spent money and kept a very good manager, and they're still just not the level. Like Luton last year, was it? Where like they showed great grit and character and fight, and I think they became really likeable towards the end because they were sort of hanging about. But when you go back and watch those games, you're like, quality difference is a joke. Like you had no chance in any of these games, and random things were happening for you. So you need a real stroke of luck. But when I was picking the bottom 3, they picked themselves, and I was like, I know some people said Wolves are going to go down. I don't even think they're going to be anywhere near going down. I think the bottom 3 are going to be gone really early, and Wolves will just be chilling above them.
Yeah, I mean, Wolves spent £42 million in January. That is ultimately the difference, and you didn't see the 3 sides below them really make any massive moves in January, which probably suggests that they are just preparing for life in the Championship and being a bit realistic about it. Okay, guys, final question: who was your big improver and your big, struggler based against the current table so far? So, for example, I think my big improver is probably West Ham, up to 10th. The side that dropped the most, probably Brentford, although I feel pretty guilty about it. I suppose the other shock, Forest dropping down to 6th, but I don't know how big a shock that is. I think that's still an amazing season for Forest. Nubaid, who was yours?
Everton. And Everton, I want to say, what looks like 15th or 16th.
Yeah.
They end up having a good season.
Difficult without the numbers.
They end up having a good end to the season. And then Fulham, who, as I said, I was so reluctant for them to go down the table, along with Forest, obviously, because I do think Fulham are a really good team. But yeah, I'd go Fulham to drop down, Everton to go up.
Nice.
It seems strange to say it, but City are probably my team that are actually going to do better than how they currently are, according to my predictions, come the end of the season. I'd probably go... I mean, you could pick a few, but I think United, I've got them 13th down to 13th, and I think...
Staying exactly where they are.
I think that says...
That's still a story, though.
That's still a story, so I will go with them. It's just, this season has been absolutely wild, hasn't it? Let's be honest. No one. If you said to a Forest fan, I mean, you're semi-disappointed that you're putting them in 6th.
Yeah.
At the start of the season, would you fancy 6th? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like your arm off for it. And Fulham as well, I think they've been better, actually, than what the table says. Villa should be higher than where they are, but Bournemouth have been that buffer that's kind of separating Newcastle and Villa. And actually, as a Liverpool fan, having Forest in that top 3 at the minute, I don't know if you'd agree, but they're almost a bit of a buffer as well, because they're keeping the Chelseas, the Cities, the Newcastles kind of out the way a little bit.
Taking big points off big teams as well.
Yeah. But we do need them to lose a couple, though.
yeah. I'm not worried about them, but just go a bit further away.
No, this is all great, but back to regular.
It's strange when I look at the table, like it just doesn't look right to me. And I mean that like respectfully to Bournemouth and Forest, but part of the reason City and Chelsea are in this top 4 that I predicted is because I just couldn't get my head around certain fixtures. Like I think I predicted Chelsea Bournemouth, which I think is in about 4 or 5 weeks' time, and I think I predicted in my head Bournemouth winning that 2-1. I was like, it's 2-2. Chelsea ain't losing. And I was like, why? What's the rationale here?
Yeah.
But because of the emotion attached to these teams over the years, kind of landed that way. But if it finishes this way, like it would be insane.
Okay, guys, thank you so much. Guys, let us know your tables in the comments. Don't be too personal with the abuse. We had to give some sort of table, of course.
Not everyone's going to be happy with
that.
Well,
no. They could be a pretty spicy comment section. But bring it on. Let us know your thoughts about all our predictions in the comment section. Nubaid, if they want to check out your stuff, where can they find you?
I think I've managed to get at Rambo FY on all platforms. So at Rambo FY.
Check it out. And AGT, same for you?
Well, unfortunately, I don't have AGT. That's America's Got Talent. Unfortunately. And I've tried, but Simon Cowell is just
he's not giving it up.
too tight in the negotiation room. But yeah, Alex Gilday Trot and the Cop TV is my little baby. And then obviously on DR Sports, it's just a free-for-all and absolute more entertainment than if you want the analysis, watch this guy.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
but if you want the entertainment, the cookings, then DR Sports.
It is a lot of fun over there. You know, there's fun for all the family on YouTube. You can enjoy whatever you want. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Thanks to Nubaid, thanks to AGT, and we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.